There's a neuron can sort of be firing or not firing really. That's kind of like a discrete, binary operation really. But when you can compose multiple inputs and outputs onto different circuits, you can attenuate them in different ways. So the UTXO model is a little bit like that, in that the things are flowing discretely, and everything doesn't have to go back to a central control unit. They can have inputs from neurons into a synapse or something from a remote location, as well as from the primary source of the signal. But there's the analogs. They're not immediately there, but I know that there would be a lot of application of it in the field, simply from having the data integrity on all of the records, as well as to modeling circuits and pathways and things like that. So I'm excited for that field to mature and to see where it goes. I haven't put too much of my attention into trying to make the two mesh just yet, but just incidentally, I bumped into my supervisor from my master's. So I did a little micro thesis, and the other day I was at the airport, and I look over and I haven't seen him for 13 years or something, and I said, "Oh, hello, Daniel," and he's like, "Oh, hello." Yeah, it took him a minute to recognize me, and then I just explained what I'm up to these days, and he said, I was hoping you'd come back and do a PhD with me. But I said, I've actually been looking, to go back and do something like that, a PhD, or take my studies a bit further, and finding where there's there's plenty of spaces, but where there's a clear path to follow in melding the two together.
Yeah, perfect. And one of the things that I see just based on that, how you responded there, is like, there's oftentimes described within the body, the human body, that it has this natural sort of wisdom to it, this, innate ability to heal itself, things like this, where, maybe you have, the functions of a liver, the life of the liver, it doesn't necessarily need to be top-down controlled. The brain isn't constantly, directing the directives of the liver. It's just allowing the liver to be a liver. And that sort of, has this sort of weird parallel, like you said, with, the firing of neurons, throughout the neural network, almost as a parallel to that, the firing of the transaction model, the UTXO model in Bitcoin, where you have, instead of this top-down control system of one governance model, like one central node that's informing the directives of all the individual pieces and parts, it's really this this cooperative competition component, where it's the multitude of the various different decentralized nodes that are all operating on their own best interest, but it's within a holarchy, so to speak, that that cooperates to a shared and just as the body creates a shared health network within its own organism, you could argue that these various different nodes are creating a shared, healthy system in terms of the governance model of the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You took that out of what I said, but it seems very true. You have the autonomic nervous system just setting certain functions just to happen autonomically, without having to consciously intervene with them. So it could be similar to something like an overlay, or an aspect of a particular. Sorry, I'm just getting a doubling of my voice. It only just started, just all of a sudden. Oh, now it stopped as you muted yours. Yeah, so the liver could be its own little overlay, and the spleen and the kidneys, they're doing their thing and they're not taking control, but they're speaking a shared communication protocol through the action potentials of neurons.
Yeah. So I want to jump to this concept of the white paper itself. Can you just talk me through, when did the white paper occur to you, or how did you come across it, and what were your initial thoughts about it? Were you able to digest it fully, or was it something you had to sit with?
I think I still get um, intelligence from it when I read it, but I first came across it in 2011. Um, I've on the programming, not that I could program, but I just used to sort of keep an ear to the ground, and I was subscribed to the programming subreddit. And there was an announcement that Mike Hearn had built a Bitcoin wallet in 2011, and I went, what's this? And did a little bit of digging, and I read the white paper, but I think I would have a couple of, at least like the calculations section, I probably just glossed over, and um, I don't think I really properly understood. I knew that there was a concept called hashing, but I didn't quite understand, the elegance of it. But yeah, I got the system designed pretty quickly. I was more or less convinced straight away, and got some and started playing around with them. This was the first ones that I got. You could just buy them through PayPal before they'd even banned it because of the chargebacks. And, then then they stopped doing that, and I got my next ones off a Second Life exchange, where I had to buy Lindens and then get some Bitcoin. But I was like, this is amazing. Wow, this is the future of money, micropayments, peer to peer, and I was evangelizing it in 2012 and such, and people just thought I was nuts. No one had the time to read the 11-page white paper, and they just humored Todd. They're talking about Bitcoin again.
Todd, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, buddy. Nice to have you, my man. Thanks a lot. This is Gavin coming at you. We've got an audio connection. So let's, Mike, my great teacher, mentor, Zig Ziglar, he always taught me through stories, man. And, I want to hear about the story about the white paper. There was a guy, Satoshi, apparently, that was running under a pseudonym. So would you help paint the picture of this like fantastic story about this whole creation and give us a like kind of a personal touch to it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I read the white paper, and in 2011, as I said, and it was one of those pieces where there was some parts of it that were above my head, but I was also a bit surprised myself that I was able to understand it, because it's written in this way that explains the problem, explains the solution, even if there's some parts of it that are a little bit too technical for you. They don't detract from your capacity to understand the whole of the system. So I read it then because I thought, if I'm going to play with this system, I need to actually familiarize myself, and it informed me to make the decisions. And then I went off and started digesting. I think it was the forum was SourceForge then, or I think it was in the forum of SourceForge where you could have the discussion about it. And once I got into listening to other people discuss around it, then I became confused, because that's where all the debate was, and that's where all the pundits and stuff were saying it can't actually work, it doesn't do this. And I'm thinking, this paper is written in this way that's very affirmative, and it says that the solution's here, and it says this is how you do it. And when you read the posts from Satoshi, it was very affirmative of what you could do. But then other people who seemed, to conduct themselves very confidently in the forums and stuff were being quite critical of certain things, and the way that two people would debate. It made me think, oh, is this actually not as sure as it has been claimed in the paper? So the white paper always stood as that beacon of clarity for me, but then it was once you went into the social debate of things that it became murky. And because I came from a background of more wet sciences with biology, medical science, anatomy and stuff. I didn't really trust in my capacity to understand the technical elements of it. I didn't really know the ins and outs, not that I even do now, but I have a lot more of a solid foundation in computer systems and such. So I kind of let these people that acted like experts become the way that I thought, oh, well, they must know there must actually be these problems about scaling, and there must be these things. And as you know, once you could find a more authoritative voice on these things and get that extra level of understanding, then you can realize, oh, it's just like anything in the world. There's a lot of people that want to talk about things that they will assure you they have utmost confidence in their abilities, but it's not always the case.
So it sounds like there's you're getting into like where there was some...
Does that satisfy the story you're looking for, Gavin, or do you want to? Because once I around the time of 2018 or 17, I followed the split between BTC and BCH, but I'd taken a little step back for those years of 2016 to 17 from BTC because it just seemed so messy, and there was all these other platforms that were coming online. And I thought, well, maybe BTC just can't scale, and I'll go and explore all these other assets. So I wasn't really. I'd noticed that our BTC was completely sort of censored on Reddit, and there was no the Bitcoin talk forums had become a bit of a mess. So I was looking far and wide for something that had I guess at that point I was still a bit more of the the pirate philosophy and looking for this, the holy grail of decentralized cryptos that would empower the individuals and sort of didn't have a place for law. Like we were just going to do it ourselves, and we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and create this new protocol that empowered everyone to build our decentralized utopia. But every other place that I looked, I just found that you were looking at vaporware, and you were looking at people giving you promises of things, and when you started asking hard questions, you'd get kicked out of their social media channels and stuff as well. So then going back to the first principles of just scaling on the base chain, and as Craig started coming more into the fray and finding material from him, then going back and reading the white paper and listening to what he's saying, and then reading it again and finding that anyone who referred to that document as their sort of master manifesto for how the system is designed, their knowledge just stood above other people, because there was a consistency in everyone that stood by the white paper, rather than everyone who wanted to introduce their own ideological bent to the system about where it should go. The system is as it's described in the white paper. Now just master that. Read the sentences again and get the extra depth of understanding that's contained in the dozen words of that sentence, because as you do that, you realize that it's like there's layers to that understanding. You can read it cursorily and understand and go, okay, cool, this system makes sense, and the components all piece together. But you realize the statements about small casual payments is one of the leading sentences in there, because that's what enables the whole system to work. You might just read it and be thinking, oh great, I can do international payments with this because I can send money to Brett in Colorado. But it's the heart of it is around those small casual payments, and the heart of it is around the non-reversible small casual payments that remove the requirement of an intermediary to do conflict resolution on those small payments, and then risk the burdens to any organization that has to employ manpower to resolve those conflicts. You can't, there's a threshold by which you can't commit someone even for 10 seconds to resolve a dispute for a value that's less than you can remunerate that person for 10 seconds. So they're fundamentally, it's a sinkhole trying to put human agency into that.
Todd.
that conflict resolution. So that's where Bitcoin came about, was to automate that function with the network of nodes and the consensus system.
Todd, can you hear me?
Hey, Todd, what I found really interesting is you said that you were around in the SourceForge days, and I think not many people, know of that time period, and someone who came in 2013 like myself, I only ever knew the Bitcoin talk forums, so what were some of maybe the differences or things you noticed? Because I think a lot of people have tried to erase that fact from history.
It was just like an obscure little thing. What is it? A Smart Machines forum or something like that. So, I was reading through it, and I think I read through most of, you try and find Satoshi's posts in there, but I was an outsider. Like I didn't have a computer vernacular or anything like that. So I just was lurking in those forums. And, I think I read most of Satoshi's stuff. Maybe, when you be looking at the different headings of a post or something like that, a lot of them kind of whooshed over my head. So I'm like, okay, authority in directing people, outwardly in the public. So it was just like, this is just now been released, and it's robust enough that people can now debate on how to interface with it. But yeah, then I think maybe I got some, used them for a little bit, and then I think the price of that at that time, it went up to around $30 and then tanked back down over the next few months to around $2 Aussie or something. And I think my enthusiasm sort of, I just naturally moved to some other things for a little while. You can only absorb as much content as is coming out regularly, and you're like, wow, a new merchants accepting Bitcoin for their alpaca socks or something like that. But there wasn't that much to keep you fulfilled if you couldn't participate in the system. So then when I came back to check it again, the forum I think was Bitcoin Talk, and I didn't immediately realized that something had changed. I just thought it might have been part of the evolution. And I remember there was a missing, the Smart Machines forum or some little tag like that. I'm like, this seems a little bit different, but didn't think much of it, and didn't realize that what had occurred behind the scenes was actually, a migration without Satoshi's consent to a platform, and that we were basically only viewing an archival look at Satoshi's writings, and there wasn't any new posts from him. And it's only really come into my recollection later when you oh yeah, it was on something else. I didn't pay that much attention at the time to the the creep towards other arenas.
All right, Todd, how we doing, buddy? Can you hear me? Todd?
Yeah, no, it's small nuance, and not a lot of
Todd.
people, are aware of that. So just
I'm
fascinating to hear your take.
I'm still having an
Gavin
issue.
was going to jump in. I saw that he had unmuted, but
yeah, testing.
Brett, I don't know if you want to keep it rolling.
Testing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Gavin, if you are trying to speak, we lost you again. So maybe whatever you did last time, try it again. Yeah, well, one thing that I'd like to maybe, jump into with you, Todd, is we've gotten a lot of feedback about the BSV Academy's white paper course and how excellent it is. So maybe could you walk me through what it's like, taking something that, I hold in such high regard, I think you do as well, as, this document that upon reading it, you may find deeper and deeper layers to the context of these, the simple 12-page, 11-page document, and then converting that into an education course that's available for free. And what was that process like for you? Was it daunting to try to convert such a sort of like almost like a perfect paper into a course?
Well, that was done by Brendan Lee. So I think I don't know who came up with the idea. I think he maybe proposed it, or at one of these conferences shared the idea with a few people. So he started working on that and going sentence by sentence. So the course is basically, maybe it has the 12 chapters, and then the subsections are basically, okay, here's one sentence, a dozen words. Now here's 3 paragraphs about the deeper meaning of what this is talking about, and here's some of the the background that you'd have to understand to get the depth of appreciation for what's being said in this statement. And while he was writing that, and it's quite it is a long process, and this was before any GPT agent could speed things along for you, so it was a tedious process to unpack it. But Brendan's a computer systems engineer, so he's the right man for the job to really talk about everything in its what is actually nested within that precise sentence. But at the same time, Ryan X Charles was doing the basically reading the white paper on YouTube with Craig, so they'd go through those sentences. So I'd listened to those ones with Ryan, and got a lot from it. So as I took the course, it was good because I kind of could speed through it. It wasn't really intimidating, but it's a significant undertaking. It does probably demand at least sort of 6 to 8 hours of your time, which isn't a whole lot, but in this today's world, it's pretty hard to suggest to anyone to spend 6 hours on something that if they don't have a passion for, they don't see the immediate benefit of. But it is, if you can read and you take that course, you come away with a quite a profound understanding. And I've said to many people over the years, like, if you take that course and read that, you'll know more than 99% of the people that hold a digital asset. And if you take the other courses on there, you'll know more than 99.99% of people who hold a digital asset about how the system works, and it'll equip you with the capacity to critique other platforms, other systems. You'll be able to sort of fundamentally go, but why don't you just use SPV? Or what are you actually? How do you plan to have global commerce when your fees are $10 a transaction? And how does do you plan to delete all the records if you want to do a ZK roll up or something like that? Where are the transactions being recorded? Oh, they're just all summarized as one hash. So you're not actually interested in preserving that chain of digital signatures. You're just trying to have finality on a flow of value.
I think we got you back now, Gavin. Give it a try.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Testing. How about now? Testing. Yeah.
Good to go.
Sound amazing.
No echo?
No echo.
Oh, man. All right, cool. So anyways, thank you very much. We got thumbs down, thumbs up. Okay, great. So Todd, this is great. Thanks for being on the space with us today and really sharing your insight about this white paper thing and how it all works, and also the BSV Academy course. It sounds like there's a course where people can learn more about this, and you said it's only going to be about 6 to 8 hours if they want to learn it, and that's free. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the Introduction to Bitcoin Theory, written by Brendan Lee. But incidentally, it's funny that you're having the space, and it would have been good to have it a few years ago, as the Academy itself we're going through a migration phase. So we're currently on a bespoke build for the platform as a LMS, but it's not really competitive with modern learning environments. Getting features added to the platform takes some time, and it's we're kind of just we've been taking a bit of a stab in the dark. The courses that we've built, there's 6 hours to it, but it's been challenging to get people to even take a free course that will equip them with, really powerful knowledge, valuable knowledge in a to become, unlock trillions of dollars of values over the next 10, 20 years, but they still don't really, get the motivation to tackle that. So I think part of the problem is they look at it and go, oh, 6 to 8 hours. So we're moving onto a modern LMS, which is called 360 Learning, and it has a lot more sort of features for collaborative learning. There's elements of gamification in the experience, and they really suggest to design everything in this way for the modern attention span of a course is no longer than 15 minutes, and you teach 1 or 2 concepts in that course, and then you bind those courses together into a path, and then you can nest paths within paths. So while we do have that course available for free on the BSV Academy, I think we've basically committed to sunsetting that platform in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, and migrating all the content onto 360 Learning so that we can curate things a bit more relevant to particular personas who are going to go through an educational journey. Because the theory one is sort of ubiquitous, it's relevant for anyone, but an executive who comes in and they've got their time poor and they just want to understand the value proposition, they might need a path that's 2 hours and just compresses essential understandings of hash functions, Merkle trees, for then data integrity, micropayments, payment channels, and content delivery. So they do a 2-hour course that has bits and pieces extracted from our corpus that we have. Then a developer might go through a pathway that they don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of the white paper. They might just want to know the particular libraries to use, the SDKs and such like that. So they may have a pathway that leads to certain steps that are going to be certified. They're a junior developer. They have familiarity with the TypeScript SDK. They know how to sort of instantiate an overlay service. They know how to package transactions such that they're going to be received by the Terranode network. So we're kind of re-architecting our whole learning experience currently. So if you have the enthusiasm at the moment, go and take the courses for free, because as we move to the new platform, there'll be a greater cost per user. So we really want to only onboard users who are going to go through the courses. Maybe there was a couple of thousand people who started that 6 to 8 hour course, and then less people finished the course. Maybe a couple of hundred finish it. So we want to try and get that retention of anyone that we bring onto the platform and that we're taking through a pathway. We have some accountability steps and certifications and incentives for them to complete something, and be a bit more discriminate around who we're targeting, that will add significant value to the ecosystem. So developers and enterprises and such like that come on and can project manage.
Now, how about now, Todd? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. Yeah. So, one of the things in the white paper talks about doesn't it talk about like a fixed supply? Isn't that one of the?
It's not really mentioned in the white paper.
Oh.
That I can recall. It's more. I think that's more in the peripheral, just comments and stuff, and in the protocol notes.
So then, where did this 21 million come from?
It's more defined in the code base essentially, and it's basically defined by the algorithm. When you see that for a node to validate a block, the block reward has to be, the transaction fees. Every transaction in a block has to be a valid transaction, and for a transaction to be valid, the sum of the outputs has to be less than the sum of the inputs, and the difference in those sums will be the transaction fees, and that value, that difference, has to be enough that it satisfies the policies of the miners, and then the miner will also award themselves a Coinbase transaction, which grants them the access to whatever the block reward is at that point in time. So it used to be 50, then it was 25, and they will only validate the transaction if you're awarding yourself 50 Bitcoins during the first 210,000 blocks. And they'll only validate it if you're rewarding yourself 25 during the blocks 210,001 to 420,000. So when you sort of calculate that algorithm, and there's a rule, I think once it gets to like a fractional unit, it's rounded up, I believe, or it's rounded down. And when you sort of go through and you go, okay, for 210,000 blocks, you can only specify yourself 50 Bitcoin. For the next 200, you can only specify yourself this many Bitcoin. For the next, you can do that. And then when you get to a fractional unit of Satoshis, it's rounded up or down. That value equals 221 million.
So it seems like, with a lot of the fiat currencies right now, we have in Congress here in the U.S. where they print money and they vote on it, and then they print it like as much as they want oftentimes. So what's stopping Bitcoin from doing the same thing?
So I've heard Craig talk about this, and I talked to Brendan a little bit about it. I think there's a couple more places that can be added. I think there's like 2 or 3 maybe decimal points that can be added into sort of fractionizing Satoshis. But the reason why that many Satoshis was chosen is, I think, within the hardware of a computer system, the way that data is stored, at a certain size in a registry, you can introduce these errors where a value can slip to being a 1 or a 0. So the reason why they would sort of 10 to the -8 is because if you go any more decimal points, you can have these errors that might accidentally add or subtract a Satoshi in the calculation of it. So it seems like the value was actually set more by the limitations of hardware about what kind of numbers they could actually handle without there being a very slim possibility of an error. So it's kind of a hardware restriction, but then there's not really any way, because the miners would all have to agree that if you want to introduce a transaction that is going to award yourself more Bitcoin than exist, or Bitcoin that exceed the amount that's the valid block reward at that point in time, and that exceeds the amount that was contributed by all the inputs that are committed to a transaction, there's no way that they're going to validate that transaction unless there's some top-down guarantee that they're all going to act in concert together. But it would fundamentally invalidate the whole system if you started introducing it. So the only way you can do it is to introduce a protocol change that all the miners are going to agree to, and I don't think they're going to agree to it unless they've been massaged by social engineering and stuff in the background, and they're acting in sort of through a non-competitive communication channel.
All right. So it sounds like you're referring to consensus. Is this concept in the white paper about the consensus of the miners or the nodes?
Yeah, it's in the white paper, in the sense that the nodes, in the steps to run the network, it defines what is required. So there's 6 steps in section 5 of the white paper. So nodes broadcast all new transactions to one another. Then they assemble the transactions they receive into a block by basically hashing hashing the raw transaction data, building a Merkle tree out of it, creating a digital fingerprint for the ordering of all those transactions that you've recorded in the block, their relative position to one another, and just representing that whole data set by one value. And then they broadcast, when they find a proof of work solution to that, they broadcast it to other miners, and the miners will check that all the transactions that are included in that Merkle tree that's represented by that digital fingerprint are in fact valid, that the difficulty value they specified in the header was the network-wide difficulty that everyone is working on. There's a couple of other little checks that they will make, and if and only if those things are all correct, then they will signal their acceptance of the block by building their next block referencing that block itself as their previous block. If they don't agree with anything in that, they're never going to reference that block as the hash of the previous block, which is an input in the metadata or the block header of the one they're currently working on. So there's not a chapter on explicitly detailing that. It's kind of just assumed that you'll get it.
So back,
that's the way it's built.
Back to the paper now. Let me ask you about this paper as an academic, that you have an academic background. So, like, before this paper was published, was there a lot of other people that had tried to do this in the past? And it sounds, I already can tell. I mean, I know some of the question, but if you could see what was why couldn't, I guess my question is what was different about this? What made it so different about this paper, and how was it received by, in the early days in 2008 and 9, what was the reaction? What made it different?
So two of probably the strongest references in the white paper for Haber and Stornetta's way of timestamping a digital document. So that was really set up in the early 90s, and the mechanism by which they would do this is you'd email a digital document to them, or you'd email the digital fingerprint. They would include that digital fingerprint. So I guess even starting before that, when you all digital documents are represented as a 1 or a 0, a string of 1s or 0s in binary. Those digital documents of any arbitrary length can all be converted via a hash function into a fixed length output, and depending on the hash function will determine the output length. But you send off those digital fingerprints. If any change has been made to those 1s and 0s of the digital document, that digital fingerprint will be entirely different. But if the data is still completely intact, then it will always recreate the same digital fingerprint.
Now you're talking to an audience here that has no idea what you're saying. So if I were to bring my dad onto this call, right, like he's an investor, he's real estate, he'd be like, "What the hell are you talking about, dude?" So I just want to try to slow things down a little bit, and you're like way out in outer space in the way of your intelligence, right? So try to come back down to earth with the rest of us and bring it, just answer my question about this white paper and tell me what makes it different, dude. All right, you're on the forum in 2009, right? You get it? Wow, this is amazing. It solved a problem. What is the problems that it seemed to solve in simple terms?
It was a distributed timestamp server.
Okay, so which is stamping, making a stamp, right, of when something happened.
When something happened, but that something existed in a particular state at a particular point in time.
Okay. And so when somebody read this paper at that time, who understood that, was that like an aha moment? That was like the big revelation?
No, I don't think many people understood that the timestamp server is the heart of the system. I think people you know, in this day and age, people are so they fetishize money so much, so they just looked at it as a the most of the excitement was people looking at it as a monetary system,
Okay.
and then looking at it as a monetary system that was outside of control because it was
right. The anarchist side.
That was a strong point. Like when I go back and look at the comments that led me into it, there was so many people in the comment thread that were really toting this anonymous angle, this anarchist sort of angle, this you know, now we've got money that we can that government can't control and such like that. And then they all had these names like Bitcoin fan, Bitcoin money, or like, and this was a couple of months after it had come out. So it seemed that there was a whole bunch of people that had taken it to sort of put an ideological agenda on this system, and the communications arenas were getting saturated with this ideological sort of philosophy, and it was really like radicalizing people, and it was suggesting that it was anonymous, and it was suggesting that, you know, it can't be tracked and all these things. So people were kind of you know, the Silk Road was around at that point in time, and that's where a lot of the excitement for you know, people was that it could be used in these darknet use cases. I don't remember reading anything from that time about the, you know, the universal benefits of a timestamp server.
Okay. So like back in that time period, so what I mean, you know, people are reading it on this forum, right? And they're seeing this and they're seeing, okay, this solved these problems. Now we can have our own money for, you know, our own anarchist money. What was it that this paper did that like a different paper, Way Die, or these other papers in the past that didn't quite reach that point?
Well, that's what I was saying with Haber and Stornetta. You used to send them your digital fingerprints, and then they would weekly batch all those digital fingerprints and publish them in the newspaper. So the newspaper in that way was kind of acting, or the weekly publication was like a block.
Oh.
And then the newspaper was like a node. So was publishing widely for all to see.
So was this the blockchain side of things? Was that like the big?
It's like the first blockchain, because each week you had this new batch of digital fingerprints which were being published. And so if you had, say, a contract that you wanted to demonstrate was still in the same state as it was in 1989, you can, or 1991, when this sort of timestamping service came alive, you could then send your digital fingerprint to be included in the newspaper. You keep that newspaper, or you go to the public library and you find the newspaper from 1991 and you say, look, I can still recreate the same digital fingerprint with this digital contract, so I can demonstrate that it hasn't been tampered with. But in their paper, they said, we don't believe that it'll ever be possible to do this in a distributed fashion with computer systems. They couldn't realize that there was a way that you could sort of set all the agents that are publishing it, like the newspapers, against themselves, competitively, to be checking each other's work so rigorously that it could be done without the the human intervention in that system.
Okay, so that seems like.
Gavin,
go ahead.
Sorry to jump in. I don't know if you're leading, the witness, but I was going to say one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the breakthrough is really comes down to the proof of work system, right?
Boom.
And the ability to vote with CPU power. So
yeah, well, that's perfect.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, what is that? What does that mean, Michael, when you talk about proof of work?
It means that when it's timestamped, you're unable to go back without a majority of the CPU, hash power, right? So it's a way to prevent double spending, and that's why the 51% attack is, concerned. But that's really the elegance of it, is kind of the ability to vote with your CPU power and later, hash power with the ASIC miners. So just wanted to highlight that piece, but didn't mean to.
No, please. I'm glad you brought this up. Thank you. That sounds like, I mean, the real magic, the real elegance here, Todd, is that what changed things was this being able to have a system that proves what happened, and they vote with their CPU, with their computer power. Is that What proof?
Yeah, so there was some hashing had been used in the past, because the hash output is pseudo random. Whatever, when you put something through, you can't really know what it's going to create. But say with hash shard 256, there is 256 bits of space for the output that can come in randomly. So that means essentially there's all of the numbers between 0 to 2 raised to the power of 256, which is like 1 with 75 zeros after it. So if you want to say, when I put something through a hash function, likely it's going to create something around the middle value of 0 to 1 with 75 zeros after it. So most outputs will lie somewhere around the middle, just because of the way there is like a probability distribution. It's very unlikely that you would get the second last number, or it's very unlikely that you would get number 0.00001. So if you want to say, I need an output that's really unlikely to find, you can sort of use that as this difficulty function to say, that you have done a lot of work to find that solution. But the elegance of a hash function is you can check that, with one operation within a fraction of a second. So the proof of work system was miners saying, okay, I've found a value that's really hard to find, which means that in the time that we're producing the next block, it's very unlikely that someone's going to be able to work hidden, in a shadow operation, and be finding other values that are equally as hard to find and satisfying the consensus rules about what constitutes a valid block header, because it needs to say, at this difficulty threshold, that's saying how elusive the number is to find. And if you can check the difficulty threshold, so you can say, okay, look, it needs to have 18 leading zeros, and this one has 18 leading zeros. Okay, I can pretty safely assume that it took them a ton of work to find that, and they're never going to be able to, unless they're trying to subvert the system, working honestly to their own self-interest, they're never going to be able to outcompete the rest of the miners moving along, producing blocks collectively that are going to extend the chain tip faster than a single entity can.
So part 4, paragraph 3, it says the proof of work also solves the problem of determining representation in majority decision making. If the majority were based on one IP address, one vote, it could be subverted by anyone able to allocate many IPs. So proof of work is essentially CPU, one vote. So CPU, one computer, one vote.
One CPU, one vote. Yeah, and it also prevents Sybil attacks. From, like you said, someone kind of doing a botnet type of attack using multitude of IPs. It protects against that as well.
See, like, unless you can have digital and identity bound to a poll, there's no way on a digital system that you can have a poll that's simply on an alias, reflective of a democratic process. If you do a Twitter poll, I can create 100 Twitter accounts, and even if it's going to check my IP address, I can spoof the IP address and get 100 different IP addresses that are all under my agency, and I come in and weight it by 100 points in my favor. When it's bound to the hardware, and the hardware is doing the voting by being as an optimized CPU chip, you can embed multiple ones of those, but however many CPUs you're contributing to the task, that will give you the advantage to be competitive against anyone else who's also got X amount of CPUs. So there's a significant cost then to having the hardware.
So let me see. Let me just see the next 2 sentences. I think are right on point. If a majority of CPU power is controlled by honest nodes, the honest chain will grow the fastest and outpace the competing chains. To modify a past block, an attacker would have to redo the proof of work of the block and all blocks after it to catch up and surpass the work of the honest nodes. So if somebody wanted to attack the chain, does that mean they would have to spend the money on the electricity and the resources to do that? Is that basically what it's saying?
Yeah. So if the majority is working on the honest chain, then it's never possible for an attacker with less to come over and be able to extend the chain faster. But if the majority is a dishonest chain, so because we're in a situation where with BSV we have a minority hash, so there's lots of available SHA-256 hash power, and we can't always assume that BTC could move over 10% of its hash onto BSV, and it would be the majority hash power. But if it was attempting to insert double spend in that majority hash power, then it would be proposing a dishonest chain as the majority, and we would be under a different situation where the anyone working honestly, the game theory still holds that a minority attacker can't subvert the system, but because of this arrangement where the SHA-256 hash power is split across multiple chains, it still creates this susceptibility to that larger hash power coming on and being dishonest, which is why there's the importance of a system like the network access rules and the alert system to say, okay, we've fallen back onto human systems now because we're in an adversarial situation. We have to have manual intervention in here that's going to say, look, there's a double spend transaction here. We have the proof of why this is an invalid transaction that's attempting to be proposed to extend the blockchain in that direction. So we need to use manual communications channels to coordinate ourselves and say we're working on this honest version which doesn't attempt to extend the chain with a fraudulent transaction.
Okay, Todd, this is awesome, man. Thank you for bringing this up. So now I want to open up a little bit to people to bring up questions, but specifically I want to ask a question for anyone who's on stage right now, or if anybody wants to request up to answer this, or feel free to chime in. That is that why, what is the motive? Like in legal situations, we always think like, what's the mens rea? What's the mental state? So like, what is the motive for someone to want to learn this white paper? We start with you, Todd, and then I would like to hear from anybody else. Like, what is the motive? Like, obviously, Michael Scott, he spent time. Brett spent time to learn this. You've spent a lot of time to learn this. I still am trying. I want to learn it, but I what's the motive?
I'm realizing that I can't speak for everyone, so I'm just an insanely curious guy. I kind of just get obsessed with things for periods and just go into stuff. But I think I saw the value proposition of blockchain, that it's set to unlock so much potential. We currently, the smallest value you can transfer in a discrete, one-off instance online is really like around $1. But there's just all this value that's failing to be captured and accurately priced in a market because we can't exchange smaller amounts. We can't put a price on a single action, an email, all these things, which when you send an email, it turns on servers, it sends electricity through things, someone's paying for that. And if you don't actually front the cost for it yourself, you're going to be the victim of someone providing that service for free because it adds value to them, and the value that they get is by stealing your data and selling it themselves. So we want to move into a model where you have data sovereignty, where you have the capacity to decide what of your value you're sharing with other people, take it to market voluntarily, and create entirely new markets around granular data, bringing them into Web3 arrangement, into AI algorithms, bringing it into
so it
taking your
sounds like
the data.
Yeah, sounds like your motive was to help to see the vision of like capturing that less than $1 market share where people want to send transactions online and they're not able to do it. So, I want to go over to One Love. She's brave enough to raise her hand and come up on stage. So go ahead and unmute, One Love, if you can.
Oh no, thanks guys. I'm at work, so I'm sorry if there's a little bit of noise in the background. But I had actually done the course back around COVID. Actually, when I saw that there was a course to take and it was free, I was like, wow, fantastic. Let me jump right on this. And I did the introduction and the theory. And I'll tell you, for somebody who wasn't involved in Bitcoin at the time, it was challenging. Okay. It was an introduction, but it to be honest, I mean, I needed a more basic level than what was there to start, but I really pushed myself through it and I got through it and I was happy I did. Actually, but since then, I was planning to continue on, but I didn't know, Todd, if you could just tell me so there's other courses now that are available on the site, is that it?
Yeah, so there's a range of ones. We have there's basics, Bitcoin basics protocol and design, so you sort of get an understanding of what a ledger is and things like that. So it's a good
Sorry,
starting.
I think you cut out there for me for a second there.
Oh, okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, yeah. So there's the starting point probably that we would suggest anyone takes is that Bitcoin basics protocol and design. So that one was written by Connor, and it just talks about what a ledger is and what a block is, and what
Is it me, guys? Am I rugging? I've been rugging all night, but
Yeah, One Love, we can hear him just fine.
You're fine.
Okay, I'll drop and come back.
Here,
but
One
I'll
Love, let me ask you if you can hear me. What I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. What was so you sound like you took some of the course, or you took the course. What, you had to have a motive. Like, that's a lot of work. You learned this, what was your motive? Why did you want to learn that?
That's a good question, Gavin. And honestly, my motive is I'm the type of person that if I'm invested in it, and at the time, my husband was involved a lot longer than I was. In 2020, I quit my job and I had more time, and I knew about it. It was in the background of our lives all the time. And I thought, okay, if we're invested in this, if we're like, I need to understand this. And I'm not just somebody that is going to know the cursory. I actually want to get under the hood and I want to see how things work. And that actually is the only way I learn and get a better understanding of how things work. So that was for me the biggest motivation. And I think a lot more people are like me. You can't just tell them. They actually have to see it and get into it themselves.
I see. So you were invested in Bitcoin, and because of that, you wanted to get under the hood and say, well, what do we? Or your husband was invested; he might have known about it, and then you wanted to say, well, what are we doing? What's this all about? I want to learn.
Yeah, I felt it honestly. I felt like I had a responsibility as well, right? It's not enough for just one person in the household to know about it. I'm a really big advocate of this. Okay, so I'm like, guys, tell your wives. I don't care if they don't think it's their thing. They should know about this just as much as their husbands. It's really something that everybody needs to understand. And I'm sorry, but like more women need to get involved, right? Just because it is revolutionary and it has the opportunity to change a lot of things. So yeah, I'm always trying to talk to the wives of people that I know and try and get them involved so they understand it. And sometimes it's just a matter of explaining it in a different way, right? A lot of guys in the space like to talk about it in a certain way. And I find that with women, it resonates differently if you hit on different topics.
Very helpful. Nice. Somebody was jumping up on stage. If you want to go ahead. Who's that? Casey.
I was just going to add to that, as a woman, like I'm here because I saw an opportunity to create passive income for myself. So, I mean, a lot of moms that want to stay and work at home and just earn passive income, I think that that's going to be a huge opportunity. So I would love to see some education for that
Yeah, and
vertical
it's
of
not
people
really
coming.
passive though, right, Casey? Because you do have to invest a little bit of time and energy into understanding it to really like do it well, right? You can't just be completely passive. But if you do get into it and you understand it, I mean, then you get a good sense of the space and you know what to do from there, right?
Right, but we're already expending social media energy to begin with. Like, so to me, that wasn't like adding any extra work to be able to earn. So yeah, I hear you, but it is still like a very good passive income opportunity if you get to earn off of people that you invite to the new social media platforms that are going to emerge. So I look forward to more opportunities like that being built because I think that will appeal to so many more people that are looking for economic incentivized opportunities for themselves, especially that, they control in all aspects of the process of earning that money. So,
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, what about Brett? I mean, like, or Michael, or what do you guys think?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, please,
yeah.
Brett. What's your
No, it's
motive
a
here?
really good point. And I think just holistically, there's two sides to it, right? So you have the game theory aspect and kind of the incentive structure and that sort of thing, which I think a lot of folks are drawn to. And
I
just,
can't hear you,
what,
Brett, or
I hear Michael.
oh, I don't hear Michael.
I don't hear
um,
Michael either.
Michael, you're good to go on my end.
there might be a connection with them, but, so you have that aspect of it. And on the flip side,
Sorry,
like what,
Michael. If anybody can't hear Michael, please just unmute and mute or rejoin, if you have to. Go ahead,
kind of,
Michael.
yeah, so kind of like
Okay, I'll
One Love
drop down.
was alluding to, which, kudos to you. I think that's awesome, to take the initiative and really understand the inner workings, because eventually, if you want to understand Bitcoin, it will come down to a technical level, right, of the script language, of Merkle trees, of the digital signatures, right, of the hash functions, right. And so, that's really where I think BSV Academy is extremely valuable in terms of their course offerings, because they can get really comprehensive. For example, they have that Bitcoin script course, which is a 7-hour course by itself for just Bitcoin scripting, right? The Merkle trees is its own 5-hour course, right? Hash functions, it's its own 5-hour course. So, and as someone who took, some of these, and then also the introduction to Bitcoin theory, um, you think you
What was
know
that?
Bitcoin, but until you take that course, you really don't,
So,
right?
Michael,
Because,
you were
yeah.
like super busy guy. You have a job and a career and a family. So, what motivated you to spend all that time to learn that stuff?
A couple things really is, so as an investor in Bitcoin, someone who's, done well, from 2013 to 2017, and then, hearing Craig and others, kind of teach a little bit more, in the coming years. I think that for me, as an investor, you have a cursory understanding of the system based upon kind of the punditry of it, right? And just, you know, what some of the thought leaders like the Andreas Antonopoulos, those kind of folks are speaking about. But again, what I find incredible with, the resource that is the BSV Academy, no one has ever structured a course that is as comprehensive and going over every technical aspect of the overall system, which is why when I took it, I said whoever's behind this had to have created the thing, because they know every single minute detail. And I like I said, I highly encourage people to take advantage of the courses. But that's really what motivated me, was to take that next step, because again, I knew kind of the basic, one CPU, one vote, and sort of those kind of functions within the white paper, and reading the white paper, and also engaging in discussions, debates, etc. on Reddit back then, and other platforms. But I think Freg really, you know, fancied my curiosity to really understand more about the system, because I think a lot of people are invested, and they're invested like thousands of dollars, or hundreds of thousands, or whatever it is, and they don't really know what they're getting into, kind of like what One Love is talking about. So that was really for me, just to motivate myself to understand that. The other piece was, this was around the time of, Twitch and some of the other platforms and some of these other businesses that were being creative. So I part of it was there's an Scrypt course, which I don't know if it's still available, but one of the technical courses has a section where you can actually develop applications in kind of a sandbox environment. It was really cool. And it was basically brought to you by Scrypt. I don't know if it's still around, but it taught you basically the development aspect. And so this was at a time, it was in 2021, when I was kind of dabbling into, I was actually part of the Discord group, the BSV Discord, and I had a node that I spun up. So it was kind of just me really trying to get more involved, right, with the actual business side of it, to kind of explore some of those angles, kind of what Casey was alluding to. So
you had
that's
skin
really,
in the game,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
you were like just double downing on your investment in a lot of ways. It sounds like, right? You were making
that too, but also, I will say this, and then I'll turn it over to Brett. But actually, yeah, I'd be remiss not to bring this up. But a lot of it comes down to the fork, right? Because everything's fine and dandy when you have the 1 Bitcoin and like number go up, whatever it is. But having BSV kind of bootstrap itself and really, for me to have a calling to that original vision, right? It really made me kind of dig a little deeper and really understand what is Bitcoin. There's so much misinformation. There's so much gaslighting. Now they're saying SPV doesn't exist. I mean, that's why with the white paper, it really is a North Star, right? To know that this is the truth that was released, right? We can debate about this pseudonymous, identity all day long, but we do know that there are, these are the sections, SPV's there, right? Everything's outlined, and that really is a North Star for a lot of us. And as we kind of move into unlocking the potential, right, it's only going to come from a system that scales, that is actually, that actually works as intended. And this is where you're seeing the breakdown of, for example, BTC Core, where they're kind of going into the Lightning and some of these other bolt-on solutions that are quite frankly not working very well, and that explicitly go against the white paper. So for me, that kind of ties everything back into
beautiful. No, beautiful. Your North Star analogy is freaking like poetic, dude. That's like eloquent. The North Star, the white paper is the North Star of the industry. Like, look there. What did it say? Over to you, Brett.
Hey, thank you very much. And yeah, really been enjoying this dialogue. Yeah, I would just say from my perspective, I went out to a Chamber of Commerce event yesterday and was just, talking about BSV with my community members. And, you get a lot of questions from people that don't have any technical background, let alone one, as nuanced as Bitcoin. So you really have to kind of put it into plain language sometimes for people. And one of the things that I was using as a metaphor was, I was describing how basically what blockchain is just, you can imagine a different set of computers that are all trying to agree to the same set of information, the same history. We may, just a use case or an example, you have 5 different computers and they're all the time talking with each other and they're trying to confirm information, but they don't all have access to the same information at all times, just because of the way that the physics of light and information is that it has to travel. So some, it reaches places closer more quickly than it reaches distant places. So naturally what you have is these conflicting sets of information. And so what blockchain does, and the explanations of proof of work explained how that actually happens. But the proof of work is a work hurdle that allows for the distant computers effectively to agree on a single shared set of information. And like that may sound kind of boring, at a distance. But at the same time, what I'm passionate and motivated by about this technology is that if we can teach our computers to coordinate with each other and to connect and to agree on a shared set of information, then we can do that as a people, as a global species of humanity, a brotherhood of man, and we can work towards a shared set of ideals, etc. That Bitcoin teaches us really is about, using the fundamental forces of the market as basically like a base layer or a base protocol, and then building layers on top of that, similar to like these overlay networks on top of it. So, for example, we have the base layer of capitalism, free market capitalism, but then on top of that base layer of free market capitalism, we have a group of people that really like fresh fruit, and then another group of people that really like, rare art, etc. Right? There are these subsets of organizations and groups those groups participate as as overlay networks effectively on top of this base layer of a open peer global digital economy. And and as silly as this concept of just getting our computers to agree on shared information seems, when we can do that, we can demonstrate, like human beings are sort of monkey see, monkey do. We can see, okay, look, we can preserve our narrative as a global population, as a global, humanity. And we understand that on the bedrock of the free market principles of, capitalism and of our striving for our own best interests, we actually create conditions, economic conditions that, just like, a biosphere or an ecosystem of biology where, you have fishes that or you have the algae that grows on the rocks, but the algae cleans the water for the fishes, and as the fishes have cleaner water, they become a better meal for the coyotes, and the coyotes, all of this stuff, right? This is the effects of a free market capitalism where every single individual group and species that's all working in their own best interest, almost as these overlays, contribute to a shared health and a global state of health for the species as a whole. That's what I want to see, and I think that the more that we can build these use cases on Bitcoin, the more that we're demonstrating that our impact on each other extends beyond just our physical localities, and it really extends to a global embrace of each other's humanity, and that to me I think represents sort of like a quantum shift or a quantum leap towards a more abundant and a more loving and a less fearful, a less restrictive and a less warring populace.
And Brett, when we first talked, I think on the first show we did, you talked about your old days, like when you started studying this stuff and looking at it online and you were confused, but you didn't stop there when you read the first Google headline about, Bitcoin and scams. So what was your motive to really go down and like go deep on this and learn that white paper and figure all this stuff out? What inspired you?
Yeah, for me, the first thing that I did, I had never even heard of BSV, and I just turned on Craig Wright. I just, there was some live video of Craig Wright that was playing, and it was the day that BSV shot up to 400 or something like that, and I was like, wow, this is quite interesting. Like, I just made a lot of money, so I'm interested to learn a little bit more about this. Let me put this guy on. Oh, and supposedly Craig Wright's really important or integral to this whole network. I'm gonna just tune in and hear what he's all about. And like the interview, if anyone remembers, it's that one with the guy with like the blonde hair. They're sitting in front of a glass door or something, and Craig is like talking into the camera, and he's like flipping off John McAfee, and he's like, "Are you listening to me, John McAfee? Here, like you go, you're a complete like fucker, And I was like listening to this guy, and I was like, this is the reason why I just made all this money. Like this guy is categorically insane. He's like ridiculous. Like I can't believe this, and so I was just laughing. I was just like in my night chair at the end of the night, just like I can't believe that this guy is actually real, and so I was looking into him a little bit, and everyone's like, oh yeah, he's a complete nut job, he's a scammer. And so for me, it's always like I will take people's opinions really seriously, but I never never take them as de facto. You know, I'm like, okay, 99% of the people are saying he's crazy. Highly likely that he is, and that, you know, maybe he is all of these things that they say they are, but I'm still going to investigate and figure it out for myself. And so as I'm listening to all these BSV people, you know, and I'm like listening, I'm like, wow, these guys are so good at scamming, because like their scams sound exactly like logic. That's so weird. They must have invented some new form of scamming that is like rational and reasonable. Wow. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know, maybe actually it's not a scam. Maybe this is just rational thinking, and that everyone else is just, you know, tricked, so to speak, you know. And I have a lot of reasons why I think that that's the case. You know, I think we're emerging out of a sort of a global digital age where we've come to rely overly on that parent authority of, you know, the centralized form of, you know, hey, this isn't the information that you're allowed to share, so that we're going to censor that, we're going to do this. You have to, you know, just like in the old days with Pink Floyd, you know, and they say, mother, can I trust the government? Mother, can I, you know, what can I do? You have to only do whatever your mother tells you you're allowed to do. You know, that's the way to
Mother,
stay
may
safe
I?
in this world. Mother, may I? You know, that's what we need to do as a species. We need to just obey and not ask questions, right? That's
SPV doesn't
that's
exist.
exactly. Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, the reality of the world, I always say truth is stranger than fiction. So, you know, you can't build you know, a prison for, you know, for the heart of mankind, right? It's just, we're too free, we're too experimental, we're too curious to figure all this stuff out. And you know, it's our responsibility. Once we figure it out, it's our responsibility to get that information out there. And I think it's also a responsibility not to denigrate others if they don't come along right away, right? We need to be examples of the world that we envision and the world that we think is the proper way forward. And if others don't listen to us, like, we have to smile to them, you know, like Jesus said, you know, turn the other cheek. You don't, it's not like you beat someone or hate someone because they don't follow you or something like this, right? You just be the example of the proper way to do it. First of all, it's hard to figure it out, so, you know, that's why we host these spaces, so that more and more people can learn. And then but once you know, you don't have to ever second guess again. You just know what you know, and then you go forward through your day and you do everything, you know, like, and that's, I think, the path of enlightenment, right? You do your daily chores, you go to the store, you be nice to strangers, you do all of these things that it takes to be a good person. And in the end, if, you know, Bitcoin comes with it, because Bitcoin is a trail. It's the after effects of all of these actions.
Nice, nice. Okay, before we go back to you, Todd, let me go over to someone new here we haven't had up before, and that's Bridget. I'm going to put her on the spot. She's got I met her in person up there in the, she came to the SF hackathon, and it was, I met her either in Dubai or in London a few times. So one of these times, at least 2 times we met. So Bridget, how you doing? Come up and introduce yourself, please. Unmute. Going once, going twice. Come back when you're ready. All right, let's go to Mile. Are you got a mic? You got a mic, or you? I would love you to hear your perspective. Yeah,
I got a mic.
okay,
I can
there we
say
go. Nice. Well, good to have you back up on stage. What motivated you to start going down this path and learning this stuff and spending time on it? I mean, what was your motivation?
Well, when I just learned that there is a tool within the whole world of digitalization that we can influence the way we would like it to be, sort of thing. That's when I woke up to that, oh, okay, I don't have to ignore the digitalization in my being against it. There is a tool to make it good.
So it was something about the way you liked, you're motivated because of the what exactly? The digital.
Because there is a tool, because suddenly it turns out that there is a tool within that world that is a very serious tool for us to change the world with, right? For us to influence as people.
Okay.
As a humanity, to know that there is a tool for the digitalization to not be necessarily a prison.
Yeah, it adds a humanity, right, to a hyper digital world. right? In
Yeah.
a way, I definitely agree with that.
Nice.
By capturing the essence of one's free will within a capitalistic system, you can capture amazing art, amazing work and kind of ideas, and be able to record that, and have a trail of evidence, and I think all those kind of aspects, I would agree with Mila on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it anyway, in the much bigger picture, is that it's still just the official side of the world, as we have always had an official side of everything. And so it's
Yep.
perfect there. We will always have the private and the whatever in the dark and under the table and all of that. That's always going to be there. Anyway, right.
Good
So,
point.
yeah.
Yep.
Nice. All right. Well, while Bridget's disconnecting and coming back up, we'll come back to her when she gets back on stage. Let's go back over to our man Todd Price and see what we got, how he's doing.
Yeah, I was having some technical issues there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to say as well, with what Mila and Michael were saying there, like when you go onto social media and stuff now, it's designed to hook you in because they want to have you on their platforms for as long as possible. So you're generating as much data as possible, and you're feeding their silo. So when you can move to a model where they don't have to make money off selling your data, where an individual can have their privacy and such, you can actually, by embracing more technology, we can start to use technology less because we're not having our psychology hijacked by their like dopamine farming and such. There's like psychology in making there be a second or two before you load an app, before your notifications show up, so that you have this feeling of suspense, and then the validation of, oh yes, I got a notification, and it hooks you into using the platforms more and more. Whereas when you have the capacity to just create a market and use a service because it adds value to you, but you're not being lured onto the platform for them to extract more. The only way they want is by making it more engaging, not by subverting your psychology and tricking you into staying engaged with the system. We can just move to using this technology as a utility rather than as a soul sucking instrument.
Yeah, use it as utility. So okay, who else? Bridget, you're not back up on stage yet, so I've added
So
you.
true. And I was just going to say real fast,
Go ahead.
I think a lot of this ties back to the original stated goals and intentions of the white paper. And the way I assess the white paper is not in the technical jargon or the speeds and feeds or anything like that. It's really, what is the business outcome, right? What is the use case design? And I think what's so lost in this is literally the title of the white paper is peer-to-peer digital electronic cash. That's literally the title. And if you were to tune into any BTC space or follow any of those influencers, you'll never hear that. It's all about digital gold, number go up. And so I think ultimately, being in the IT industry, and there's a kind of a running joke that speeds and feeds is not what sells, right, to kind of a prospect. It's what is the end result business outcome? What do you achieve through the technology? And that's literally why everything below the surface exists in the first place, right? So being able to tie all of this infrastructure, all of these technical underpinnings back to the original design, I think what's integral in that is the business outcome, which is why, for me, BSV is working to achieve that through the scalability, through being able to support the global commerce, which is in the white paper, by the way, and being able to do that in a way that scales, right? That can actually bring on new users, that can onboard the world. Right now, with the 1 megabyte limit, it's effectively it limits the people who can even participate, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes a very kind of elitist kind of group where it's like, oh well, yeah, BTC is not for poor people, right? And so that's kind of where the narrative's changed. So in conclusion, for me, you have to look at just as equally as kind of the whole technical underpinnings is what are you achieving? What is the end result? And I think that's why it attracts so many builders and so many entrepreneurs to this side of things, is because, you know, there are visions that we haven't even thought of yet that are going to be able to happen on this platform.
Yeah,
So.
feel free to request to come up on stage if there's any questions or comments you guys want to join in on. And then also be sure, please repost this space. Okay, just a quick ad as well. Repost the space, comment, like, and then also on Friday, there's going to be a big space, 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern, featuring Kurt Walker Jr. It's going to be on investing. Michael Scott, you know, is an investor. These investing people, you know, like this is going to be a big one.
Definitely share some secrets.
Yeah. So Michael, you'll be back with us. And I also invited Jack Pitts up from the equity, you know, he has his handle is equity investors and then
Equity Diamonds.
Yep. And then also I also Alex Favel, he's a hedge fund guy. So investors, and this is an important space. If you're investing in anything Bitcoin related, you're going to want to hear what these guys have to say, and also questions, of course. So who's okay, Bridget, I'm going to approve you. Come on up. All right, you're up on stage. You should be. Bridget?
Yeah, hey.
All right, well, hi, Bridget. We met in person a few times, like, what was it, Dubai or in London? Definitely in San Francisco. And thank you for coming up to help co-host today. Really appreciate it. Why don't you introduce yourself, please? Unmute. Go ahead. You're probably having the same microphone gremlins that I was having, so it sounds like you're off in technical area like I was before. So X bug. Can people hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Maybe if she drops down and just comes up as a speaker and not co-host for a second.
Maybe that's it. I'm going to improve Cam as well. Okay, yeah, Bridget, if you want to just come up as a speaker, try that. Cam, what's up, buddy? You're up. You're on stage. Cam. Going once. Doge Profit. You got the freaking same gremlins? You got the cooties in your mic? Okay. All right. Microphone cooties, Bo. That's all we got. Just nonstop. Or stage fright. Maybe it's stage fright. Who else do we have? Wait, somebody's unmuting. No. All right. Well, here's the bottom line. You know, I wanted to set this space so that we could clearly like start to understand where we can learn about the white paper. And we learned now today that Todd, we can learn about it from the BSV Academy. There's courses on there that everybody can learn. Also wanted to set about like, what's the motive, you know, and why would you want to care about this? And I think we heard from people today about their motives, and a lot of it was like, hey, I'm invested in something. I want to learn about it. Is it a scam? Brett was, when he first heard about it, he heard it was a scam. And you know, well, I don't know, Brett, are you satisfied? Did you ever figure that out? Did you ever get the answer to that question? The scam question?
Yeah, now it's just, you know, the total, you know, complete synthesis of everything I'm trying to do in the world, you know, so like it couldn't be any more opposite than that.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that, you know, my first entrance into it is like, you know, the caution, you know, like out here, beyond here be monsters. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you're leaving the safe zone right now. You know what I mean? Any information you encounter out here has not been verified by the official government sources on information.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The warning. It's like the warning from the FDA, you know, the FDA warning is not over there. So if you go over there, enter at your own risk.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I did have a question for Todd if it's all right if I ask a question of him.
Good time for that.
Yeah. Todd, you know, one time you talked to me about your, you know, passion for the way in which, you know, the Bitcoin model can be looked at for localizing, you know, community activities. Like, I think you talked about it as like federated communities. And maybe could you share a little bit of insight as far as, you know, what that would look like or where your inspiration for that comes from?
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, you know, we've moved into a world where we see that a lot of the higher power structures make decisions outside of, you know, the consideration for the people and the individuals, and they make, you know, decisions for the country rather than making decisions for what's best for people in their local environment. So, say in a council or something like that, you have the mayors, you have the you know, the councillors, but you also have this other structure that's set up around that, which is of a CEO and a general manager. And traditionally, the councils were set up under, basically, that they were members, freehold title owners in a parish could elect people to form a council, which would then sort of represent the best interests of the town. And then the sort of the vote or whatever that elected those councillors was given its blessing by a member of the faith, which was, in, you know, in Australia at least, it would have been the Church of England. So an Anglican bishop sort of blesses the vesting of authority into that mayor, and that was really the way that it was set up. But we've moved now into a structure where councils are more of a for-profit entity set up with a tax registered entity, and they have a general manager and a CEO, and they've moved their model into for profit. And quite often these councillors, like in Australia, will have a meeting of 86 mayors that come together, or general managers that come together, and they set agendas that are going to be imposed in 86 councils. And then sometimes even those councils, like there's councils of mayors that go off and they meet in Canada with all of the other mayors from everywhere, and they come back and then it says, okay, this is what's happening in your town now. And I think that's the wrong way of thinking about it. So we need to create tools, and really in as much as you don't want to frame it as an adversarial situation, in information warfare and such, the first things you want to do is undermine a people's capacity to communicate peer-to-peer with one another and organize themselves and coordinate. So when we have a information protocol that allows us to own our own digital identity, to form relationships with peers and manage those peer-to-peer, we can hopefully start to create systems where small committees can vote with their digital identities, where they can manage funds in a multi-signature arrangement, where you can create sort of trusts and boards and all these devices which have been used to support community building and such over the years, but have been really subverted and turned more into not necessarily subverted, but corralled into a paradigm that's really much more around you know, a licensed based world where everything's registered under, you know, business structures and all these things, which they have their place, but people still need to be able to people have a right to self-determine, and if they want to self-determine to a more just and fair arrangement, then if they have a technology that allows them to send sound electronic money to their peer and not have to use a promissory note that's set up by the Reserve Bank of Australia, after we failed to be able to pay back our debts, they brought in a credit instrument over the top, and now we're using all these credit instruments to spend money. But as we use those credit instruments, it reinforces the necessity for that credit institution to exist and sit there. But we move more to a peer-to-peer model, and we start to be able to tokenize money which is defined in the Constitution as gold and silver, and then we can create contracts between parties and operate more under an equity arrangement rather than under so much of a licentious commercial arrangement. I think there's a lot to that, but there needs to be more tooling that makes it easy, because a lot of the people that are you're trying to onboard and that have an interest in forming new communities and operating with much more respect for the individual and much more respect for the town, there's not out the box tooling to support that. So it's available, but we need more and more people that can to build systems to sort of reappropriate something that might be like an asset management library, embedding that within a wallet and embedding an identity protocol into that, so you can start to say, even like I thought of something that's cool is, why isn't a whole town a library? You can put a QR code on your book, and someone wants to borrow the book and they can browse the library of your town and just go and borrow the book from someone. But because you then have identity and stuff embedded in it, you can now go, oh yeah, Joe Blow has my book, and they can't borrow any more books through this interface until they've returned the book that they said they'd take on a 2-week term. And you can start to, we can still have the library that's run by the council and it can fill the gaps, but we can actually supplement it by interfacing peer-to-peer with our community and sharing resources and creating free sharing arrangements and contracts and terms with one another, which I think can only add value and build a more
Brilliant,
vibrant and abundant and prosperous community.
All right, back to you, Brett. Did you want to reply to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's really, I'd never considered something like that, but it makes total sense. Yeah. And I think, just like, the base layer of the protocol, that is the extension of the protocol to be able to provide these different services. And maybe certain communities may want to borrow books, maybe other communities, want to do a micro loans or do other, other functionality on top of that. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting use case. Thank you.
Nice. Sweet.
Can
Casey
I
Nicole,
ask
you're up.
Can I ask just like a random question? When I was just looking at general search on the white paper before this call, one of the videos, the shorts that came up was Jack Dorsey talking about the white paper, and it just was so eerie even hearing his voice, like explaining some of the concepts he was talking about. But at the end of the video, it had a QR code that it flashed, and it said, scan this to learn more about Bitcoin. And I just got the heebie-jeebies about the whole
Got a
thing.
virus?
I don't
You just
trust
did it,
anything
and
about him.
you got a
And I
virus
was
on your
thinking,
computer?
like, how do we protect? Well, I didn't scan the QR code, but how do we protect ourselves against, one person scanning a QR code can give someone access to the entire phone. So, like, how does that work in the future when everything's on QR codes? As easy as it is for someone to put like a skiffer or skimmer, whatever the things are called, on an ATM or something, like, how do we know that people aren't overlaying QR codes over these things to steal information and stuff?
Todd?
Oh, it's big topic there. But essentially, when you are binding, that the scanning of the QR code is, you could have a device that will only necessarily scan that QR code if the counterparty has an input into that, what can be encapsulated within a transaction. So you have some kind of attestation that you can sort of preview what are they suggesting with this QR code. It's a transaction here that has these particular fields in it, these particular scripts, and it's saying something. So you get some like transparency around what it's going to be executed if you commit to that transaction. And the QR code, it might, it can direct you to somewhere, and then you can get a prompt. The whole world of malware and things like that is, I think it's just something that exists currently because of how broken the internet is. And when you can move to wrapping everything in transactions, and the content is delivered through payment channels, and the transaction is bound to the internet, to the packets in the IP protocol itself. you get a whole lot more, and data's secured by the keys. So say I save a file on my computer and I've got read and write permissions. Those read and write permissions are bound to the keys that were associated when I created it. And when I want to send that to someone else, I actually encapsulate that data as a payload in a transaction, pass it to someone else, and give them permissions by assigning it to the keys that they've that I know to reference them by. So everything gets tightened up, and the data access management and things like that can be really tightly coupled with the keys that you're using for signing transactions, which can then be bound to the change of state in a system. Whether you're going to allow incoming data coming from someone, you can first preview that it is conforming to a certain structure that you accept, or otherwise, if it's non-recognizable, there's no reason for you to accept it because they're not playing by the rules that you want them to play by.